Remember when Google's Stadia was supposed to be the future of gaming? No consoles, no downloads, just click and play. So how did something backed by Google die in just a few years? Back in 2019, Google walked onto the stage at GDC and promised something insane: gaming without hardware. They wanted to provide an experience for gamers without the need for traditional hardware. This shift was not merely a small technological advancement, but it was an attempt to fundamentally reorganize the relationship between games, consoles, and their accessibility to gamers. Stadia's core idea rested upon the transition of gaming into a cloud-native service, allowing users to play games instantly to existing devices such as smartphones, laptops, and televisions if they have access to the internet. Their pitch was centered on the concept of reducing the barriers of time and cost that prevent potential gamers from engaging with games. For example, the traditional console model requires a significant upfront investment in hardware, following a cycle of physical or digital purchases, lengthy downloads, and persistent software updates. Stadia proposed to eliminate these hurdles. They demonstrated the ease of access, with a user entering the actual game in under 5 seconds by simply clicking a Play Now button. This moment felt like a change in the industry. People quickly dubbed Stadia the Netflix of gaming, a comparison that captured the public imagination by suggesting a move toward an all-you-can-play subscription model. While Google did not explicitly use this phrase in its marketing, it benefited from the association with Netflix that the term provided. The analogy implied a shift similar to how streaming services disrupted the music and film industries, where the concept of ownership was replaced by accessibility. For developers, this meant a potential change in how they reach potential players who possess devices that could connect to the internet, but lacked gaming consoles. Except, that's not what Stadia actually became. When Stadia launched in November 2019, the future didn't feel so futuristic. You couldn't just jump in and play. The all-screens and barrier-free vision was significantly constrained. The service was initially only available through the purchase of the Founders Edition, which cost around $130. This created an immediate barrier to entry that contradicted the earlier marketing narrative of a platform accessible to anyone with access to the internet. But that's just semantics. At the end of the day, Google has to make some money to recoup costs of development. However, the rollout of the Founders Edition was marred by a sequence of fulfillment failures that eroded the trust of Google's most adherent supporters. Google had promised that the invite codes necessary for account creation and name reservation would be sent sequentially based on when the pre-order was placed. But many founders who had ordered within minutes of the announcement found themselves waiting days for their codes, while later buyers received theirs instantly. At launch, Stadia didn't feel like a revolution. It felt like a beta. For a platform trying to compete with PlayStation and Xbox, this was a bad start. But Stadia's biggest problem was the games. At launch, it had just over 20 titles, and most of them you could already play somewhere else. Games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Destiny 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, and a few others. And there was an obvious lack of first-party exclusives. While Google had established Stadia games and entertainment, they had not teased a single original title by the time the service went live. This absence of a system-exclusive game meant that people don't have any incentive to get a Stadia, making it a very expensive game delivery product. The primary criticism leveled against Stadia throughout its lifespan was the absence of must-play titles that could only be found on the service. In the traditional console market, exclusives serve as a primary driver for hardware adoption. Oh, I forgot. At launch, Guild was the platform's signature exclusive. It was a family-friendly horror stealth experience game, I don't know, that followed a young girl something. And beyond Guild, the Stadia exclusive library consisted mostly of smaller titles or timed arrangements that eventually migrated to other platforms. Games like Outcasters, Pistol Junk Raiders, and Wave Tail are a bunch of games that apparently were exclusives, but I've never heard of these games at all. But in the thick of things were a few games I did hear about that could have been great exclusives on Stadia. Games like The Quarry and High on Life, which, funny enough, is on Xbox Game Pass. But, alas, Stadia did not last long enough to see the fruits of their labor. And then, there was the pricing. This is where things got really confusing. You paid for a subscription, but you still had to buy games. Like I said before, people were expecting a Netflix for games experience, where a monthly subscription granted access to a massive library. Instead, Stadia Pro, which was $9.99 a month, only offered a handful of claimable games and 4K capabilities, while most titles had to be purchased individually at full retail price. So you had to pay $60 for a year-old game like Red Dead Redemption 2 on a platform with an uncertain future. Because, let's be real, you have to pay full price for something that never truly feels like you own, because the games were locked to Google's store and could only be played via the streaming platform. Customers were effectively paying full price for a license that would vanish if Google ever decided to shutter the service. A fear that has been proven to happen because, Stadia closed. Which is actually no different from Xbox and PlayStation's model. So that's a whole can of worms that we're gonna have to deal with at a different time, but that exists. Now, to be fair, the tech actually worked. You could play games via the cloud, so you didn't have to download anything. But Stadia's ultimate barrier was not its own servers, but the infrastructure reality of global broadband. The service launched into a world where data caps, unstable Wi-Fi, and last-mile congestion were the norm, not the exception. And that's just in America, a place where internet is somewhat easily accessible to most of the country. I have no idea what they planned for places where high-speed internet isn't as accessible. The technical claim that Stadia could deliver 4K 60 FPS with no noticeable lag was subjected to intense scrutiny by outlets like Digital Foundry. The results revealed a complex picture where the tech worked, but not always at the levels promised in marketing. While 166 ms was considered perfectly playable for many single-player experiences, it was a far cry from the local-like feel promised to more competitive gamers. And the perfect example of this inconsistency is Destiny 2. Despite being the centerpiece of the Pro subscription, the game rendered at 180 pixels and was upscaled to 4K using the platform's hardware, resulting in blurrier image than on consoles. Eventually, in 2022, Stadia announced they were officially shutting down. In an unprecedented move for a tech company, Google offered full refunds for all hardware purchases made through the Google Store and all software purchases made through the Stadia Store. This refund policy was a double-edged sword. While it largely calmed angry consumers, it also revealed the massive financial failure of the project. Google had spent hundreds of millions on research and development, tens of millions on ports, and millions on marketing, only to return the revenue it had managed to generate. Stadia was not a failure of cloud technology, which was widely regarded as the best in class. Rather, it was the failure of Google attempting to enter the gaming market as a disruptor without actually establishing itself in the industry. By charging full retail price for digital licenses that could not be transferred or used offline, it alienated customers. The platform's demise confirms that gamers do not care about technological advancements. They play games. Google's fundamental misunderstanding of the market, assuming that technical superiority would automatically translate to market dominance, is a lesson that will likely resonate for decades. Stadia represents a pivotal moment in gaming history, where the ambition of cloud-native gaming collided with the reality of customer behavior. While the platform failed to become the Netflix of games, it forced the entire industry to accelerate its cloud initiatives. The idea wasn't wrong. Today, cloud gaming is growing. As of 2026, cloud gaming has transitioned from a niche curiosity to a mainstream pillar of the $205 billion global gaming industry. The projected user base for cloud gaming is expected to reach 493 million by 2027, up from a mere 62.5 million in 2020. This growth is driven by several key factors that were missing during the Stadia era: the rise of subscription-based models, the integration of cloud apps into smart TVs, and the focus of high-performance gaming through handheld devices. Unlike Stadia's purchase-heavy model, 2026 is dominated by Game Pass-style subscriptions. Xbox Cloud Gaming has leveraged its library of over 150 titles to reach 20 million subscribers, many of whom access games across mobile, PC, and smart TVs. PlayStation Plus Premium has seen similar success, with cloud streaming monthly users on the PlayStation Portal handheld growing by 162% in early 2026. In the end, Stadia had everything: the resources and the money, but they just didn't have the most important things, and that's the games to incentivize gamers to join their platform. As we can see with PlayStation and Xbox, they've been in the industry long enough, and they have customers that are loyal to their product. Unfortunately for Stadia, they weren't in the industry long enough to have games or players that were committed to their product. But let me know what you think. Did you think Google Stadia would have actually be one of the big gaming companies? Let me know down in the comments, and please be sure to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.